We live in a very noisy world. And no, I don't mean the noise that comes from the blaring of loud music or the honks of cars stuck in traffic. What I mean is the noise that's in your head. The noise that keeps you from focusing. The noise that comes from the expectations that everyone has of you. The noise that comes from the bills that are yet to be paid. The noise that comes from the trouble going all around in the world, blasting through the evening news. The noise that comes from your family demanding more than you can give. The noise that comes from your employer who could never pay you enough for everything that he has you doing. I'm talking about that noise because sooner or later the noise gets into your head and you find that you have no moment of respite. Your mind keeps screaming that you're inadequate. It screams that you were not made for this. It screams that you're weak and vulnerable. It begins to fill you with thoughts of giving up, with thoughts of just isolating yourself and withdrawing from everyone. And the truth is, we all live with this noise. Even when we try to close the doors and turn off the lights away from the pressures and worries of the world, we find that the noise in our heads will not let us be. How many times have you gone to bed and woken up the same because you just could not lay your worries to rest? Isn't this why every year we see a significant increase in the number of mental health cases in the world? Isn't this why even young people are succumbing to high blood pressure and heart attacks? Isn't this why more people are succumbing to suicide? They can't escape from the noise. Because when you turn off the TV and you lock yourself up in your room, what happens to the noise in your head? What happens to the voice that calls you a disgrace? What happens to the voice that calls you a disappointment? How do you escape that? But you know, if you're talking about pressure on every side, there's one man who understands it. There's one man who was very familiar with noise coming from every angle. That man is Jesus.
He was facing this mountain alone, yet he had to report to duty. How many of us are like that? We carry weights on our shoulders, yet we smile. Because everyone is expecting us to keep up with the smile, and we don't want to disappoint them. So Jesus was heading for Jerusalem, and when he arrived at the Mount of Olives, he sent two of his disciples to go ahead of him. He sent them into a village to get him a colt. And the disciples threw their garments over the colt so Jesus could ride in it. The Bible records in chapter 36 that as he rode along, the crowd spread out their garments on the road ahead of him. When he reached the place where the road started down from the Mount of Olives, all of his followers began to shout and sing. And as they walked along praising God for all the wonderful miracles they had seen, there was so much noise. The followers were praising and shouting. They cried out, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest heaven." But these people didn't even know what they were celebrating. They thought Jesus was going to overthrow the king. They thought he had come to deliver them from their oppression by the Romans. They didn't know that he was going to be crucified for their sins. They surely didn't understand the tragic end inside or the glorious resurrection that would follow. So they were shouting his praises, applauding him, even without understanding what he was capable of. Isn't this the same with us sometimes? We have friends and family that think so highly of us that they push these unrealistic expectations onto us. But we are the only ones who truly know what we're capable of. We're the ones who know the price that we're going to pay. Everyone sees the end result and pushes you, but no one is going to help you pay your price. No one will truly understand the sacrifices you need to make. This is why you cannot afford to get carried away with the noise. People will lead you on to places they will never go themselves. You must know who you are in the noise. So Jesus was on that donkey, probably thinking about how confused the people were. They were carried away, excited, not knowing that in a short period, they would be weeping because the king would be crucified. But while Jesus was dealing with the praises of these people on one hand, he was also facing condemnation on another hand. In verse 39, the Pharisees called out to him and asked him to rebuke his disciples. They were always criticizing him. They were so afraid that the presence of Jesus would make them redundant. They thought he wanted to take their place. Yet again, another set of people who didn't know what lay ahead for Jesus. Some people will criticize you. They will mock you. They will antagonize you. They think you don't have issues of your own. To them, your life is perfect, if only they knew. And truly not long after that, as they drew near the city, the Bible records that Jesus began to weep. He wept for Jerusalem. He wept for people who didn't know what they had because he knew what would befall them. So this was Jesus with noise from every end. He had to deal with pressure from people who wanted to crown him king at all costs on one hand, and then deal with the others who wanted him gone. At the same time, he knew the grief and sorrow that lay ahead for Jerusalem, and despite his sacrifice, he could not save her, at least not at that moment. So Jesus wept. And I found this profound, because many of us are so used to pressure and bottling up emotions that we don't feel them anymore. We get so used to the noise that we build walls around our hearts, and this is how we crash. When last did you weep? When last did you admit your helplessness, your pain, your fears, your tears? When last? The first mistake we make is to think that our admittance of the situation makes us weak. No, especially not in God's kingdom. The Bible says that his strength is made perfect in your weakness. In this kingdom, it's okay to cry when you're hurt. It's okay to cry when you're pressured. It's okay to give a huge shout of frustration. It doesn't mean that you lack faith. No, it means you're human. And this is why the Bible said about Jesus that he is a high priest, very in touch with our weaknesses. He understands much more than you think he does. This is why he is a perfect example. He understands pressure. He understands doubt and pain and anguish. He understands it all. Jesus could go through the noise because in all of it, he never forgot who he was. He never forgot his purpose. He knew where he was headed. He knew what he was destined to do. So the praises of the people could not throw him off track. The praises could not get to him. The praises couldn't get him to settle for a life that was not what God planned for him, regardless of how appealing it may have sounded. The condemnation and criticism didn't deter him either. Through it all, he stood firm. He knew who and what he was. Jesus, the Son of God, the Lion and the Lamb. Who are you?
What do you stand for? Don't allow yourself to get caught up in the noise. Find yourself again. Remember that you have a high priest who is not unaware of your afflictions. He knows what has happened and what is going to happen. Open up yourself to be helped by him. He's the one who can teach you to navigate the noise. There's a knowing in the noise that keeps you from being drowned by the noise. You can know too. There's a knowing in the noise that keeps you from being drowned by the noise. You can know too.